Welcome to Decades of Horror, the 1980s.
I am Ergo, the Magnificent, short in stature, tall in power, narrow of purpose, and wide of vision. And I do not travel with peasants and beggars. Goodbye.
This is episode 215, recorded September 8th, 2022.
Gruesome Magazine.
I am your host, Jeff Mohr, and this podcast is about films released between 1980 and 1989. Each episode, my co-hosts Bill Mulligan, Crystal Cleveland, and Chad Hunt and I will tackle another classic or not so classic film from this radical, gory, influential, and gruesome decade. On this podcast, we usually start out by giving a few basic details of the film we're covering and have some first impressions of the movie. And oh yeah, our infamous tagline segment. And then we just kind of take off down the road with whatever we find interesting to ourselves. But first, let me introduce our co-ghost. First up is Crystal Cleveland, the Living Dead Girl and co-host of the Gruesome Magazine podcast.
What's up, guys? I'm fabulous. I'm super ready for this one. I wish I had my little glaive.
Your hand would be covered with Band-Aids. And
that's right.
Yeah, that's probably true. But you kind of hold it like that, right? Isn't that like the key?
I don't know.
You hold it like that.
Hold it like this because I have no fingers left. Yeah.
Also joining us is Chad Hunt, comic book artist, co-host of Decades of Horror, the classic era, and the 1970s. Chad, how you doing?
I am
Keegan's fourth wife.
Super fantastic.
Wow.
I totally missed your...
I'm still waiting for him to come home.
Well, I got news.
Are you the one that cooked for everybody, or you were the one that ran off down by the river
never
to
tell.
play or something?
I'll never tell.
All right. Also with us, last but not least, is Bill Mulligan, writer, director, special effects guru, and co-host of Decades of Horror, the 1970s. Bill, what is going on?
I just got back from Dragon Con, where I got to spend time with Crystal and her wonderful family who treated me so well. And it was a good time. It was a great time. I look forward to doing it again and hope more folks we know can get out there. It's a trip. It's an experience if you've never had it. But even if you have, every time is different.
Yeah.
Good time.
So did you go to the con at all, Crystal?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I it's right here now since we live right here. So I think next time I'm just gonna go for the whole week.
I think next time Crystal needs to apply to be an attending pro because she's more qualified than I am, and I think she'd be great on the panels.
Oh, you know what? I don't know why I asked you that because I saw those pictures of you meeting
Allison.
Yes, Allison. Is it Scagliotti?
Yeah. I love
Crystal's
her.
a big Warehouse 13 fan.
Me too. I loved her too. She was my favorite character.
She's so funny. She's like that actually in real life. That's kind of how she really is, like making these jokes and stuff and picking on the guy. See, I don't know who his name is. The guy who plays Pete. I don't know what his name, the actor's name is. He was there too. You can see where my heart lied, though. I just cared more about her. But Bill had 7 panels too. I don't know how he did it. Oh,
I ended up on the Thing panel with Chris Moore.
Oh yeah.
And
I saw you did 8. You said you did 8, and
someone didn't show up for the Thing, and they're like, "Bill, get up here." I'm like, "Okay, I'm not going to say no to talking about John Carpenter's The Thing." Heck no. So
no kidding.
Just well attended panels, great audiences. Just if you
that's awesome.
Good time. Yeah, good time.
Yes.
All right, well, let's get to our film. Now, again, this particular film is 39 years old, so, we're going to spoil it if you haven't seen it.
What are we truly spoiling here? Come on.
As we record this, it's available to watch on HBO Max, and I'm sure other places. So, our topic is Krull. 1983. directed by, and it's Krull, not Crawl. I told Doc we were doing Krull, and he went looking in IMDb for Crawl.
What? You mean he didn't know what Krull was?
Yeah.
He did, but he kept mishearing me
it.
and couldn't get it in his. It wasn't possible. So anyway,
just tell him it rhymes with dull.
Yeah, Krull.
Yeah.
Directed by Peter Yates, written by Stanford Sherman. Cast includes Ken Marshall, Lysette Anthony, Freddie Jones, David Batley, Bernard Bresslaw, Alan Armstrong, Liam Neeson, and Robbie Coltrane. It's filmed at Pinewood Studios in Buckinghamshire, England, also in Italy and Spain, and some locations around Buckinghamshire. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. It was released July 29th, 1983. Now, here's the fun part. The budget on IMDb was listed as $47 million.
Is that what?
I saw another thing that said 27 to 30 million, and it referenced Variety and Starlog magazines. And then when Nick Maley was talking about it on his video on his website, he said around 40 million. So a lot of money in 1983, especially considering the domestic box office then was 16.9 million. So somewhere in the neighborhood of a third to a half of the budget.
That explains why there's no Krull 2.
Yeah, and I don't know why. We could have seen the sun rule the galaxy. Yes. All right. Synopsis. A prince and a fellowship of companions set out to rescue his bride from a fortress of alien invaders who have arrived on their home planet. The planet of Krull. And even though we call it a fortress, the Black Fortress, the infamous Black Fortress, it's actually a spaceship, which is where the...
But it's kind of both.
If it wasn't for the beginning where you see the spaceship come in and land, you might actually think it's just like a black magic, mystical good versus evil kind of thing.
If it weren't for the opening thing in space and the fact that the villains shoot laser beams, there's nothing remotely sci-fi about this. So I don't.
Yeah, he's bringing a sword to a laser fight. Like
So
never works.
We'll take a minute now. It's time for taglines with Chad.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What the?
That was great. That makes me so happy.
Crystal's trying to help me out and make this professional, but I declined.
He told me no. He told me no. I offered.
Why make it professional? The sillier you can make Chad look, the better, the funnier it is.
I tried to help you out, Chad. I tried.
All right. I appreciate it.
Plus, my internet's bogging down, so it doesn't play when
that was funny, though.
Play. Anyway, taglines.
Okay.
Not very
all two of them.
Oh, wow. That's,
Tagline number 1, a world light years beyond your imagination.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So was Laser Blast and a lot of other movies from.
Yeah.
Beyond our time, beyond our universe, there is a planet besieged by alien invaders, where a young king must rescue his love from the clutches of the beast, or risk the death of his world.
Is that a tagline or a synopsis?
Yeah.
Cheese and rice.
Also, how exactly
like
is
a tagnopsis?
In a galaxy far, far away.
How is a planet beyond the universe? I mean, do they understand how astrophysics works at all? No. It's beyond the universe.
Beyond our universe. It could
beyond our universe.
Okay.
Well, and that's it for the day.
Look, there he goes.
Thanks for coming.
Off to save the universe yet again.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, that was great.
I like that.
That's a better tagline for Krull.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was fun.
All right. Crystal,
That was amazing.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
Mhm.
This was your pick, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your first impressions for Krull?
Okay, so I did see this obviously as a kid, and I loved this freaking movie. I remember like wanting to be her, she's gonna be the queen. So I was like, oh, she's so pretty. And then I don't know. There's something. This is definitely a fantasy type film, and that was really my favorite. Even now, even to this day, I love fantasy. I love Legend and Labyrinth, all these kind of films. But now I see why this movie stands out. I didn't realize how much money they put into this. That was a lot. No wonder why it looks so good. I remember like really truly being afraid of the spider web lady. Ugh, God. I mean, I have a really bad fear of spiders. And I would say, yes, it's probably arachnophobia because I think irrational thoughts when I see a spider. But I don't know if this contributed to it, but it didn't help it. That's for sure. But the leading the leading guy. I mean, he was precious and handsome and like, oh my God, the costumes.
Precious and handsome.
It's been forever since I've seen this. And I think that's because it's just been hard to find. It seemed like when I was really young, like it was like on HBO or something. Well, it was on HBO this time too. But I think I'm going to buy it after this so that I can watch it on a more regular basis. If I can get a DVD or a copy of it or something, because I missed it. And it was okay. So do the special effects hold up? Yeah, a lot better than some movies for sure. Some of it's better than others, but now I don't know. The fact that it costs so much money to make just kind of gives me a different opinion. For some reason, I always thought this movie was low budget, which is silly. Now watching it with everything that went into it, I'm like, of course it wasn't low budget because look at all the stuff that they did. But this was better than Clash of the Titans. For sure.
You like this better than Clash of the Titans, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear from Bill Mulligan next. When did you see this, and what were your first?
I very much disagree. I did see this in the theater when it came out, and my favorite part was the link to Clash of the Titans, the fact that the spider was stop motion animated by one of the animators who helped Ray Harryhausen, helped him out on Clash. And I thought then, as I think now, I couldn't get a handle on this film. It's neither fish nor fowl. It's a fantasy, but then they kind of introduced these sci-fi elements, and I didn't think it worked. There's no reason why the beast had to be from another planet. It would have worked just as well that he was just a malevolent force on the land of Krull and has a magic castle that appears and disappears. Take out the laser beams, and this would have been just straight fantasy as much as legend or anything else. The budget bothers me because although this cost 30 or 40 times something like Star Crash, I don't think it's necessarily 30 or 40 times better looking than Star Crash. It's obviously better. But I feel like the money was wasted.
I have to agree with you. Yeah, it's a lot of money for that time.
When we talk about like the beast was one of my, I was not impressed with the design or the execution of the beast all that much until Jeff sent me a behind the scenes video of the guy who made it and showing what it looked like and what it could do. And it was a really solid piece of practical effects that for some reason they filmed as though they were embarrassed by it. Like they were afraid we were going to see the zippers if it wasn't all distorted and hidden. He needed to be up close and personal for us to really see him as a legit threat. He was scarier when he was being a changeling. You know, when he was the hero with the creepy eyes, that was much more effective. So, it's an odd film. It's got some things I like. I like the centaur. I like some of the sets that are really cool. I thought the leading man acquitted himself quite well. Some have complained that he's not a strong hero. I think he's fine. I like his version better than if he was Arnold Schwarzenegger going around.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought the lead actress is absolutely beautiful. She didn't have a whole lot to do, but she was good. Yeah, for me, it just doesn't quite come together. I prefer Legend, where at least the villain is,
I'm with you there.
And Peter,
I mean,
Peter Yates is a good director. He's a solid director. He directed some really, really good movies, only one of which is genre, this one. And I have a feeling maybe this just wasn't his thing. I can see why he wanted to do it, because after Star Wars, everyone thought anything like Star Wars is going to make money. But maybe this just wasn't the right fit for him. So
yeah.
I'm glad you picked it. I'm glad I got to watch it again, because I don't think I've seen it since that time I saw it all those many years ago.
Wow.
But it still pretty much reminds me. One thing, I love the glaive. It's a stupid weapon. It doesn't make any sense. You could go through history and no army has ever used a glaive, because if, like me, you tried to make something like it, you cut your fingers up real bad. It's a weapon that is 100% designed to hurt the person wielding it more than anyone that they're using it against. But it's a cool weapon, and I wish they'd used it more, because it's pretty neat, and it is the one thing that has kind of stuck in everyone's head. When you think of Krull, you think of that little take it out, press a button, blades come out, and then you scream because you cut yourself. But it's a neat weapon. I like that a lot. Better than any sword. It's cool.
Okie doke. Chad, Keegan's fourth wife.
Yeah, I saw this in the theater as well, and I was always a big fan of sword and sorcery type movies, and especially if the hero of the movies had a distinctive weapon, like Sword and the Sorcerer. If you guys remember that movie, he had a double-bladed sword that would eject the sword into the bad guys and stuff like that. So I was really amped to see this, and I remember coming out feeling empty a little. Even though I like this movie, it felt like it was very incohesive. The glaive was sadly underutilized in the whole movie, and I just felt like there were a lot of things. A lot of things didn't make sense. It was very nonsensical, especially. It's not the glaive, it's us. And shoot your fire. And then he starts shooting fire out of his hand at the beast. And I was like, wait a minute. This is young Chad in the theater going, hey, now, wait a second.
You know what? It's called magic, guys. Magic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I came out liking the movie. I just had a couple of issues with it like that. I thought the Cyclops was awesome. He was incredibly well done. The Beast was nice and gooey and in some scenes, and just nice and scary looking. I thought it was a great monster and a great villain for the movie. And I loved some of these sets and some of the scenery. Like some of those sets, especially the one where it looks like she's in a giant eyeball.
Yes.
That was just almost German expressionism, almost like that, right? Like that. And I really, really like that. And overall, I love it. I love the movie. I think it's a good movie. I just wish we got a little bit more of the glaive and in action. And some of the scenes were just very drawn out. Oh, we're walking again.
Yeah.
We're walking again.
There's a lot of walking.
Yeah, they could have cut a half an hour walking out of.
They should have gotten those horses a little earlier.
Yeah. The flame mares or whatever, fire mares.
The Clydesdale.
But
the Budweiser Clydesdales.
Yeah. But overall, this has always been a favorite of mine. I love the film, and I enjoyed watching it this time too. I just dig it. I dig it.
Yeah. Okay. So just sit back, hold on to your seat, Crystal.
Uh-oh.
This is the first time I saw this.
What? Yeah. What?
I knew that was coming. Well, these are not just like
Wow.
Clash of the Titan. They weren't
Yeah.
at that time. I was not attracted to that stuff. I was watching other things. So anyway, and I think it's an absolutely beautiful movie. I love the sets, the locations, the design, and we've got some pictures of it. But even the outdoor stuff, you know, the grandiose mountain he's climbing up and across the ridges and all that stuff, and costumes, just absolutely wonderful. The acting was good. With a special nod for me, I thought Freddie Jones added a level of gravitas to the whole thing. But just I'm kind of with Chad in that too much walking. Like it took him 5 minutes to climb that mountain to get the glaive. And then it felt like I was getting this. I don't know why, but I always flash back to Monty Python on the Holy Grail. It's like, and what is your quest?
Yeah.
Our quest is to capture the glaive in the cave atop the tallest mountain. Our quest is to find the blind emerald seer to tell us where. Our quest is to go to the widow of the web. You know, it was just.
Okay, so it's like a video game. It's like, yeah.
Well, they have
It's
a
like
video
Fetch
game,
Quest.
right?
Did
Yeah,
they?
they did.
So-
They did. Oh yes, I wasted many
Yeah.
a quarter. It was not an easy game.
Anyway,
Oh.
so having, you know, I don't want to tick off all the fans and everything because I'm fine with it, but for me it was just a little too, you know, that's I don't know, that it was just
Boring. Go ahead, say it.
I think y'all
Go
are
ahead.
It could have been
looking-
about an hour and a half, but
Yeah.
what bothered me.
I'm
was
not
some of the
saying that
dialogue.
for me. I'm saying Jeff really wants to say it's boring, but he's afraid to say it. Just
Well,
say
and
it.
the Colwyn character was kind of overly. I don't know. It was like I think I would have loved it if I'd have been between like 10 and 15 when I saw it. I think I would have absolutely loved it. But instead, I'm an old coot.
An old coot. Oh my god, no.
They're on to me.
So anyway,
Is that you?
Yeah.
So it's definitely worth a watch. I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad Crystal picked it, and I loved, you know, all the stuff that was going on, and we're going to have a few things to talk about which make it really interesting. So anyway, let's see, because this seems to be one of those films that has it didn't do so well at the box office originally, but it's kind of turned into a cult following, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Bill's put together some stuff here. Here's a poster. That's the one that I've seen the most. I don't know if that's the original or not.
That's the one I saw at the theater when they.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get the beast in the background.
It's a very much a Star Wars inspired kind of poster. The beast looks more like a cave or something.
Yeah.
I think it's an amalgam of the beast and the fortress.
The castle.
Dark Fortress.
Or
Yeah.
whatever, yeah.
And the glaive did not shoot laser beams.
No, it didn't. But it was just cooler than crap. I couldn't believe he didn't fight more to get that back, because it seemed like all he had to do was throw it out there and it just started doing
It would
stuff
come back. Which, of course,
did what you wanted it
Well,
to
I think
do.
it was implied that he was controlling it.
yeah,
Somehow.
or
But
something.
yeah.
When he used it, it was really effective. So you wonder, well, why didn't you keep using it? Because you'd probably have a lot more companions if you had. You know, his friends are getting picked off
I
a lot
love
in this
that.
movie. That's a cool looking poster, actually.
It is. It is.
And there's
Because
the
it
glaive.
reminds me of when she was in the
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is an actual set, that eye, which is interesting.
Oh, it wasn't a
So cool.
visual effect?
Yeah, no, I think it was one of those big sets they used.
Oh, wow.
That's
They built
amazing.
They built. A
See, that was
massive
too much
amount of
money.
sets.
That's
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
money.
Because it was on screen all of what, 3 or 4 minutes?
Yeah,
maybe?
exactly.
Come on.
It's like, come on, guys.
All right. And then
I love this
Sherman
poster. Look at that.
So do I.
Um,
It looks like
Man.
Metropolis.
it does. It's got that old school old sci-fi magazine style, and that's the Journey
Well, there was
poster.
Yeah. So that's the what are they? The Slayers. That's one of the beasts.
What was with the Slayers? I mean, when they got killed, they would turn into these creatures that would then burn into the sand.
Yeah.
That was
never to be seen again.
I think that's what they actually were inside of that
Yeah.
armor. I think it was the armor that got destroyed and not them.
It's cool. It just wasn't explained.
That's what my thought
expanded
was.
on.
Like that's
Yeah.
the alien inside.
Right,
but
right.
I don't know. Could just be.
Well, Bill brought up Peter Yates, and he has an interesting career. He was nominated for 4 Oscars, Best Director and Best Picture for both Breaking Away, the bicycle racing one, and The Dresser.
Yeah. 2 movies that are so different from Krull, you couldn't imagine that they were made by the same person. It's.
But he also directed Bullet, which is
Bullet.
Oh wow, yeah,
which is pretty amazing.
And and that's the thing. When I'm watching some of the fight scenes, now I think part of the problem is it's hard to really construct a fight scene where one side is using laser beams and the other is using swords.
Mm-hmm.
Those fight scenes didn't really thrill me. The way they were edited, cut, it's like this was the best they could, but they weren't really exciting and compelling. Bullet is one of the most exciting and compelling films you can imagine. That chase scene in Bullet is the standard by which most are measured.
Yes.
I think one of the problems may have been the amount of money involved. The studio had a lot of say, and usually that's the case. And maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I
feel the same way. Those fight scenes. He's supposed to be the planet's greatest fighter, Colwyn is, and the scenes were just very badly choreographed and shot.
Special.
Yeah.
Sword fights where people are hitting each other on the sword.
Well, I wondered if the Slayers were if the costume was inhibiting because they were pretty weak. I saw one guy just kind of go with his sword.
Yeah.
Well, if the Slayers really were these tiny little bugs living inside the suit, it was probably very difficult to make those arms move.
Well, so let's talk about this a little bit because there was Nick Maley mentions it, and then I read it someplace else that there were tons of changes to the script, which and then they designed the Slayers originally totally based on cool looking. But they were not like movable or couldn't be in any of the fight scenes they were in or something. So then I don't know. So he talks about that a little bit. Nick Maley had to come in at the last minute and do some major overtime to try to modify him in some way. I don't know exactly. He doesn't really talk about what he did or how much they changed. But anyway, so if you're messing with the script and changing the script, it's going to cause problems with the effects people. And anyway, so what do we know about our stars? Lysette Anthony.
Leslie Nielsen was in this? Just kidding.
Yes.
Yeah, she didn't do a
Is
whole
that
lot.
her?
And
Okay.
yeah, she was in Dracula. She played the Lucy character in Dracula Dead and Loving It. She's one of those things, boy, she's got star quality all over her, striking presence. And then you wonder why she didn't do more. And then you read some of the history. She, unfortunately, was one of the actresses at a very young age who had a terrible experience with Harvey Weinstein.
Oh.
One of many, I'm afraid. And she has continued in the business, and she came out and talked about her experience with that pig. But I imagine that probably sours you when you're an 18-year-old kid and this is your introduction to Hollywood. And she was also dubbed in this movie. So if they dub you in the movie, that hurts. You don't get the credit you maybe deserve, and people assume it's because you did a bad reading. And I don't think it was that. They said they wanted her to sound more mature. Why they didn't then hire someone more mature, I don't know, but that was the reasoning. A lot of
she's still out there. She's been in some I don't know what show this is. Hollyoaks. I'm going to guess it's a British lives, loves, and careers of a group of teenage friends and their families. 400 and some episodes of that over like 15 years.
Wow.
So, a long-running.
I thought she was fine
yeah.
in this, except she just wasn't given much to do. She was at the very beginning, the way she was standing up to her father and everything. She was very likable, and but we didn't get to see a lot of her other than just her resisting the beast. And I thought that those were effective scenes, the interplay between the two of them. There could have been some more of that, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no. She was in Dr. Jekyll and Ms. Hyde with Sean Young and Tim Daly.
Yeah. That movie's dire.
Well, it's semi-genre, right?
But look at her. I mean, she looks like a painting. She looks like a painting of a princess in distress from a fantasy film. It's perfect casting.
She looks totally French. She looks so French. I don't know what she is, but she looks very French to me.
Right.
There's some other stuff on here, not good stuff. Trilogy of Terror 2.
What is her name?
In 96. Lysette Anthony.
She was also in the Dark Shadows reboot from the 90s, yeah.
Oh.
Tales from the Crypt, episode 3 from season 5. She's been in some genre stuff.
Yeah. But when you're a relative unknown and they cast you as a lead in a big budget movie, that's a double-edged sword. If it hits, your career is set, and if it bombs, they will blame you. Although there is not a single human on earth that said to themselves, Lysette Anthony in this film, I'm not going. I mean, whatever blame for this film, not doing well, she gets virtually none of it. She shouldn't get any of it, but Hollywood is what Hollywood is.
Okay, here's the thing. I think the problem is we're saying that the film didn't do well, and I think that's wrong. I think the film did very well. I think that they spent way too much money on the film, and that's the real issue. At that time, who spends that much freaking money?
Yeah, this is multiples of Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars was a fraction of this, and there's a hell of a lot more sets and effects in Star Wars. So
we're talking about the time they way overspent. This was a huge, massive. I just don't think that at the time they were ready for that. I mean, like it's not Lord of the Rings, so you're giving someone something new. It's a lot easier to get people to the theaters if it's something they know, something they're interested in. Yeah. But you're spending all this money on this crazy futuristic sci-fi fantasy.
And you're calling it Krull, which means nothing to anyone.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And you basically have no-name actors in it.
Right.
It's
not a pre-existing legend. It's not a famous book.
It wasn't a fail other than how much they spent on it, because it made 16. Okay, so it would have been like 17 million. Had they spent half that and made the movie, and I guarantee you it would have probably been fine. They could have found ways around a lot of stuff.
And that's domestic. I don't know what it did in England.
These things they might do better overseas.
So.
It was a studio trying to come up with their own Star Wars, their own franchise, and that's what I feel like happened. And that's why they pumped all the money into it. This is going to be our Star Wars. This is going to be our.
That's right.
And it just didn't work.
We're going to have a line of Krull toys.
Yeah.
So
if they'd sold glaives, they would have made.
I know. Yeah.
I've seen cosplays with people walking around with them, that are pretty nice, pretty cool. So
yeah,
she had a pretty full career. I mean, she's still working.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And she did something like there was a Jack the Ripper miniseries in the 80s that she played Mary Kelly in. So there's a lot of
she's got that look. I mean, as she is here, she's got that look that you could just stick her into a Victorian era Hammer-esque. I mean, whenever they do a Jack the Ripper, the prostitutes always look like her, which in real life they did not. But that's okay.
Yeah.
They look more like Jeff.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
actually. So I'm going to plug something here.
It's a tough life.
If you want to know what it was like, this is a tangent. there's a podcast I listened to called Morbid, where they did like a multi-episode thing on Jack the Ripper, and they don't just do the normal thing. Like they really dig into what life was like for the people in Whitechapel at that time, and it's scary crap. I mean, it
was scary before Jack showed up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, healthcare, sewage,
not so much.
It was in the streets. Sewage, the sewage was...
So anyway, back to this. Ken Marshall plays our hero. And there
He's
he
got
is.
like a Errol Flynn vibe.
I do not understand why.
Yeah.
It actually kind of disgusts me hearing what Bill said about people saying him not being strong. And what the hell are you talking? What? Because he's not a disgusting bodybuilder. Excuse me, I'm just not a big fan of bodybuilders. It's kind of a thing for me. He's perfect. He's perfect.
He looks like Quaid.
Yeah,
he
like
does
what?
Look like, yeah.
I just don't understand what they're talking about strong enough. What I mean, for one, he's like a swashbuckler, pretty much, so he has the body type for something like that more than it makes me angry. Sorry, I'm very defensive.
It's not Conan. It's not Conan.
And he played Marco Polo in a miniseries right before this. So
yeah,
I just think we need to accept a lot of body types, even for this time. We need to accept a lot of different looks. Come on.
We're saying, mean, this guy's not emaciated. He's a good-looking. He's a handsome guy. He's a plausible hero. Luke Skywalker wasn't buff either.
No. That's exactly what I was about to say. I think that's probably part of why they cast this guy. They probably thought, okay, we're going to have someone who's
look at any of the old swashbuckling movies. They weren't these big giant dudes. They looked like him. Yeah, like you said, Errol Flynn, Zorro movies. That's the kind of guy it looked like.
Now, I think the problem is that the script didn't serve him well. Like you're mentioning,
right?
They tell the only way to defeat this creature is the glaive. You must get the glaive. Well, that sounds like the setup for a really good quest. And the quest is just he climbs up a bunch of rocks and sticks his hand in some water and pulls out the glaive.
Yeah. No.
And then we don't do anything with it.
It was a glowing river of glue that they never that they never explained really. But
and then we don't really use the glaive. And in the end, they were wrong. He didn't need the glaive. He needed the power of love.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hey, he did an episode of Baywatch.
Oh, wow. That's weird.
Like Quantum Leap, episode of Quantum Leap. So he was doing some TV in the late 80s, early 90s.
Seems to have just quit.
He was a recurring character on Deep Space Nine.
What?
Okay.
For 9 episodes, but spread out over a period of time. So he must have been.
He's like a Jeffrey Combs. No, not quite.
Michael Eddington, Lieutenant Commander Eddington. Anyway, keep an eye out for that.
I'm sure he looks different. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't we all?
So I don't know what else he's doing. It's kind of sporadic in here as far as acting in IMDb. He may have been doing stage work or whatever else. Doesn't really say. Oh, played Tony in a 1980 Broadway revival of West Side Story. So yeah. So I thought he was fine. I
bet you. These
I much prefer him to pouty Harry Hamlin. That's
Harry Hamlin.
I'll go with
hand me the glaive.
Oh my God, that's actually really good, Chad. That is actually that's actually it.
Wow,
that's not a joke. But okay,
what is that? A glaive?
I bet you. These two people had this movie riding on their shoulders, and it didn't do as well as it had hoped, or everyone is calling it a bomb or whatever because of their own f ups. If I'm being really honest, and it probably messed with their self-esteem. It probably messed with them thinking that it was their fault. I mean, I'm sure they took it personally. It was probably. I mean, I just think that maybe it would inhibit them going after more roles, and maybe that's I don't know. I feel bad actually. That
I mean, it's not a what's the word I want? It's not a it's not a character with pluses and minuses, you know. It's he is like the only failure he has is a momentary faltering when his father dies.
Yeah.
But Freddie Jones whips him into shape by calling him a boy instead of a king. And
there's not really a great character arc for anyone here. I mean, he's a good heroic guy in the beginning and he's a good heroic guy in the end.
Right.
There's
right.
You know, we're not seeing the hero's journey here. And maybe they need a little bit more of that basic fantasy storytelling to really make
it's almost like it was written by people who didn't know how to write fantasy.
Yeah.
Just from what they'd seen before. And it really felt like there's somebody just throwing something against the wall to see what would stick.
Yeah.
To me it did, because there was just a lot of things that just didn't make sense and we were just supposed to go along with it. Like,
let's have a swamp with quicksand. That'll be cool.
Yeah. That was so old school Tarzan-esque too, with the quicksand.
Yeah.
Obviously just a lot of cork or something.
I love your line, Bill, about when you were growing up, you thought quicksand would be a much bigger problem.
Yeah, that's not original. That's an old meme, but it's true. It's true because it was everywhere, and it's so disappointing when you actually find it. You know, this movie really reminds me a lot of Legend. I mean, isn't that basically the same plot? The demon creature
she gets
beast
taken for a marriage.
She gets taken, and the hero goes to rescue her. But Legend has some other elements too, like the fact that she is, you know, he's trying to corrupt her, and you know, somewhat succeeding. And there was more of an urgency to this. I don't know. I'm sure there was a time constraint here that they had to do it in a nick of time or whatever. But it didn't feel like it. And there
were little elements of that in there where he tried to show her he's going to betray you, you know. But it wasn't really, didn't have any oomph to it. They
tried to tempt him, but he didn't.
He tried to tempt him, but again, where she should have said, "Well, maybe he will. I don't know." There should have been a moment of doubt there, but she was so, he will not betray me.
The beast says, love is fleeting, power is forever. And she turns around and goes, no, love is forever, power is fleeting.
If there would have been a little bit more of doubt in her mind, that he was planting seeds in her mind that give her something to think about.
You know, the beast isn't very bright. Here's one of the things that bothers me about this sort of thing. You know, the beast keeps the beast sends out like a changeling. Send out a bunch of changelings. Send out an army of changelings if that's what it takes. And shouldn't our heroes, once they're aware that there are creatures out there that can imitate any of them, should they be a little bit more, I don't know, huddling together to make sure one of them doesn't go wandering off and come back with black eyes?
How are you going to test? How are you going to test if they're real?
Yeah.
They should have been like the thing. They would have liked
there should have been something where they all start, you're a changeling. No, you're a changeling. And they start Spider-Man pointing at each other.
That would have been a lot more interesting than a lot of the walking. The walking scenes.
This might give some explanation on the sort of lack of character arcs. The writer, Stanford Sherman, did 18 episodes of the Batman television series.
Okay.
Ruh-roh.
And
we're talking Adam West, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm assuming.
And 4 episodes of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. And he also did Any Which Way You Can.
Never seen that.
Right.
The Ice Pirates.
Clint Eastwood?
Ice Pirates?
Gotta watch it.
Ice Pirates.
Okay. Yikes.
Okay, Ice Pirates was actually kind of funny.
But my point is that there's not like lots of the movies are not about character development, you know.
No.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I can't tell which ones these are. He's a penguin.
I feel like they focused more on the money and the effects and the quote unquote action for this.
Yeah.
They wanted I think they worked too hard on the visuals and less on the story.
There's elements like, okay, so I was just making fun of the changelings, but let me just say I really like the scene where the changeling assumes one of Keegan's wives or whatever, and is going to kill our hero, but then pulls back and remember me, and then she's killed by the beast off screen. It's like, okay, that's kind of cool. I mean, who are these people who follow the beast? Are they? Is this voluntary? Are they slaves? Do they regret it? There's a lot of different things you could have gone there, I guess. Give me something.
This is the kind of story it is. I've only spent an hour with you and I've fallen in love.
Yeah, okay. But consider where she's from. Beggars can't be choosers.
Well, yeah, okay. Probably.
Yeah, you got the beast or you got Colwyn. Colwyn's a little bit better looking than the beast.
All right. Oh, before we talk about the Cyclops, I want to talk about Freddie Jones just a little bit. Like well known in the genre, right? Satanic Rites of Dracula.
He was one of the best parts of Dune.
Oh yeah, the 80s Dune.
Yeah, which I liked. I'm one of the only
I loved it.
Good, I like that.
No, lots of people loved it.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's a reason why they remade it, because they
that's true.
People liked it.
I remember the showman guy in Elephant Man.
Yes. Oh, he was so evil. And he was wonderful in Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. I mean, one of the most heartbreaking performances in any Hammer horror film. Yeah.
Trying to get back to, I mean, this is a guy that's got so many credits.
I forgot about the Elephant Man, how good he was in that.
So Satanic Rites of Dracula as well. Son of Dracula, is that the
I think that's the one with Harry
That's
Nilsson.
the Harry Nilsson.
Ringo Starr.
Yeah.
It's not good.
So yeah, very well known British character actor with what's he got? 200 and some credits.
Wow.
So I think he just, to me, adds like a level of I don't know, seriousness or something to it
gravitas.
With his pronouncements. Yeah, gravitas.
And the scene with him and the widow, were genuinely had some heart to them and everything. That was an interesting story. In some ways, it was a more interesting story than the protagonist had.
Of anybody in the film, he had the more of an arc to his story, and learning things about him explained some of what was going on now. So. And a
heroic ending. They did well by him.
The old one from the Granite Mountain. That's what he was called.
Yes. All right, the Cyclops.
This was a real success, because this is not an easy thing to pull off. And I've seen Cyclops done before with the unblinking eye just staring there, and this one was genuinely well done. And this is fairly early in the whole animatronic prosthetic thing. This was ahead of its time.
Yeah,
he got a great performance. Just really good.
It blinked.
Yeah, it blinked.
Yeah.
Did the eyebrow move? I can't remember.
I don't know. It looked good, and the character was good too. There was that sadness about him and the knowing that he's going to die. And also, I got to say, even the one thing that I really took away from this film, the thing that always stuck with me, was what a terrible ending this guy had.
Yeah, but he knew that because if they fight their end, they get that worse death or something.
Yeah,
right?
And it was bad. That's
Chad. He reminded me of a vertical version of The Fly with the press from 1958.
Oh yeah.
It was set on zero. But he was excellent, and it's amazing how much emotion he could put into that, and the friendship he struck up with Ergo was pretty cool.
He was tall too, because Liam Neeson's no short guy, and this thing was towering over.
Yeah, who was that guy?
He was standing next to a horse, and he was like, his chest and were up to the top of the horse. I mean, he was this much taller than the horse's back. He was a tall dude.
This was where does this fit?
Not Liam Neeson, the Cyclops.
No.
Liam Neeson did. Oh, maybe a half dozen things before this. Excalibur.
Oh yeah, he was great in Excalibur. That's one we got to do someday.
But Bernard Bresslaw. I wonder if it says how. It almost has to say how tall he is, right? I mean, it's 6'7".
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I think they put him on even. I'm sure they boosted him with the boots or something as well.
I heard he could barely see. No surprise, he could barely see throh this makeup.
I would be surprised if he could see at all, honestly.
And, he's running through these swamp sets, that can't be easy when you're 6'7" and blind running around in this suit. That's a long way to fall.
According to this, he was considered to play the monster in The Curse of Frankenstein, but lost out to Christopher Lee.
Wow.
Is he still alive?
No.
I figured.
Died about 10 years later, 1993, of a heart attack.
Giants usually.
But my brother's 6'5", so but my brother's lived. He's like, I think he's okay.
Yeah,
he did a bunch of the Carry On movies.
Size 16 shoe.
But yeah, this was a good character. Was the so here's the spider stuff. So the spider, was that stop motion animation?
Yes. Yes. Very, very good stop motion and not an easy, not an easy thing when you're animating a spider. That's 8 legs. But there's really no easy
over that web thing.
Over the web too. And
I love the choice of the transparent spider though. It's beautiful. It was so smart.
Yeah. Which is tricky because, these things have armatures, pretty complicated machinery that gives you the ability to animate them. So the fact that they were able to give it the illusion of transparency is pretty effective. Archer's he's a good animator. I mean, he got to work with Harryhausen. Harryhausen wasn't going to pick anyone, but he was very young, and he did a great job on this. Yeah, I'm sure this had to be incredibly difficult to animate because you don't want to be banging into any of the webs either and make everything move. It looked good.
F that. Yeah. That sounds so. I would be going crazy. I'd be like,
Yeah, there's no way. There is no way to keep that. Keep track of that basically in your head. I don't know if there's a
Well, you can kind of
how they actually do that.
You see it. I mean, you could see it. Like, I mean, it's kind of it can make I mean, anyway. As you would move or as it would move, Yeah. I'm sure they've got a whole system. Yeah.
This whole scene kind of illustrates part of my problem with the movie, though, is that it just seems to be making up rules as it goes along. It's he needs to go talk to her because she's got the power to see where the castle's going to be, and she's got the ability to flip over this hourglass, and that's going to freeze the spider because reasons. But then once she gets in there, she breaks it and gives him the sand, and that's going to give him life for reasons, but then the spider attacks. I don't understand why anything happens.
Makes sense. It totally makes sense. The sand is what protects her. That's why the spider has not attacked her. And so she gave him the sand so that he could get out of there. That's why he has the sand. She's
who put her there?
And then she wasn't safe anymore. I guess. Probably she was punished because she killed her son.
Yeah, that's what she said.
She's a horrible person. She's a horrible person. She's bitter and vindictive and spiteful, and she's probably had plenty of time to think about it while she's in this cocoon. But that's
because she was mad at Enar.
Yeah.
Now, why did Freddie Jones die when he ran out of sand?
Oh, because his life was associated with the sand. Then, okay, so see. Her life was still running out. That's why she was still aging. Okay. But she gave him the sand, which basically was it makes sense.
Well, he poured a little bit of
totally
the sand on the web.
He's going to keep himself safe. And so that was his life. And as soon as that was done, his life was over too.
Well, I would have just put that in my pocket.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Maybe
the whole movie made sense to me. completely.
there
I
you
got
are.
it all.
Bill's like,
Even as a kid, I got it. I was like,
here's a little sand. I put it in.
I'm
my
thinking
basket.
maybe Prince Handsome should be standing there with the glaive, throwing it at the spider. It's
Nah.
just sort
But
of,
we don't. It's like a magical spider, though, and I mean, maybe
That would
there's
make too much sense.
maybe there's reasons for it.
it's a pretty magical glaive. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons in this.
Well,
movie
he
that
would
I'm
not.
tell
She
us.
would not have let him get anywhere near. It's like the only reason he survived is because the Ener
He knew
survived
who
is
she was.
because
Yeah.
of their past. He knew her name, her real name, right?
Yeah.
The spider's awesome. Spider's, I think, one
Spider's
of the
the
highlights
best
of the
part.
movie.
Oh, this is
and
my biggest thing that I remember.
the beast.
There he is in all his glory, which we didn't see enough of.
Mm-mm. I agree.
That's a shame too.
Yeah. Now, I mean, but here's the thing. Look at that bottom picture, all the detail and everything, but that doesn't exactly scream strong to me. He looks actually better above where, he's more
Yeah.
imposing and everything. He kind of looks sick and
sickly.
sickly and scared of a glaive, or, he did not seem imposing considering what a creature he was. Like I said, the only time he scared me was when he assumed another form and still had those crazy eyes. He's no Darth
But
Vader.
I'll tell you what, if that showed up at your house in the middle of the night, Bill, you'd be scared as all get out.
Oh,
That's
well,
for
yeah,
sure.
yes, that's true. But it doesn't. But he doesn't look like the Lord of Time and Space. He looks
Darkness, right, or whatever.
He looks like something the Lord of Time and Space sends after you to scare you and everything, as opposed to say Tim Curry
Fair
in
enough.
Legend. I
was about to say, I know you keep, and you know what, you can't compare the two. But here's the
I know
thing.
you couldn't. Yeah,
that movie, absolutely, I concede, definitely, that's one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's better than this, and it was made for less than this.
Yeah,
it's the money. I did not realize this. Now you threw me for a loop when I had no idea this had. I was thinking maybe this was made for like 10 million.
Wow.
I had no idea it was like one of the most expensive movies of its time. That's insanity.
Yeah. I think the
I don't know.
is,
it upsets me actually.
Yeah. If Ridley Scott makes a fantasy movie, it may cost a lot of money. They often do, but you're going to see every single dime up on the screen.
I wonder how much Legend was.
I believe it was around
30 million. It's
30
well,
million.
one of them says 30 million. One says 24.5 million.
So
still
yeah.
Significantly less than this movie. If you're talking close to $50 million, that's.
I feel like if you're a director who is not used to dealing with the expense of science fiction and fantasy, you may end up going down a lot of roads that you don't have to and wasting a lot of money in the process. But there's something, Chad.
There is some money in these sets.
There is. I was just going
to.
Jeff, you had
but
something
is that
about
worth it? Is that worth it? Is that
for such a
that's
short
what I'm saying.
scene? Yeah.
That's where I have my issue. I'm like, you spent all that money to make this. That's just oh god.
You had something.
Want to cry. It's just
Jeff. You put something
in
the trivia about how they trained those Clydesdale horses for 16 weeks for their scene. Okay, stop. That's nuts. They're horses, for God's sake.
Do you know how much horse training is? I mean, I grew up with horses. Oh my gosh. Just the care of the horses alone. You're killing me. I can't with this.
There are lots of trained horses. If you've got, I'd like to have Clydesdales. Okay, sure, but we're gonna have to train them for 6 weeks. Okay, never mind the Clydesdales. Just give me some regular horses and we'll put some booties on them that look furry and they'll look like Clydesdales. It seems like they had a lot of money to spend. They were like, money is no object. And boy, they took that to heart. And they were doing everything they can to get their franchise. No expense was spared. And it wasn't worth it. That's not what makes a franchise.
No.
I could be wrong.
All right.
Wait.
But I thought it was cool. I liked all these.
What was
these sets were crazy, but they were also sort of. You had no connectedness.
I missed it.
These are like hallways and rooms inside.
Yeah, they're cool, but what do they mean?
Right. All right. Well, let's let's wrap this up. We do have some feedback. So, any last thoughts or things you wanted to talk about that wasn't?
Well, I still love this movie, but man, now knowing the budget, it has kind of changed my perception of it a bit. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay.
And maybe that's not fair for us, because we're not supposed to know all the inside details and how the sausage gets made and everything. But it is true. When you like I haven't seen it yet, but the new Lord of the Rings TV show, going in there knowing that they spent $1 billion.
Wait, what?
Yes, they spent. That's what they admit to, $1 billion on this season.
Are you kidding?
No, kidding me?
For the Rings of Power. Amazon spent $1 billion. Yeah.
Wow.
$1 billion. And they're bragging about it like, Game of Thrones just cost $500 million. We spent $1 billion or whatever. I wish they wouldn't do that. Because I'm going in there. This had better be great. If you're going to spend that kind of crazy, stupid money, this thing better have no flaws, which is not fair.
I don't understand what has happened to movie making. Like, I just don't understand it. It's like, so one of my very favorite movies a few years ago, The Headhunter, was filmed for $30,000. $30,000, and it is a masterpiece in my mind. Just freaking amazing.
Right. Well, it is a problem when you're adapting something that is based on a film, because films look great and TV shows traditionally don't always look that good, but that's what we expect. Like, Marvel tried to go low budget on the Inhumans and it was a disaster. So I don't know, but
all right.
Feedback.
So that was Krull, 1983. Check it out.
It sure was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That was, fun times.
So anyway, we do have a bunch of feedback. To start us off, we have a few about episode 214, The Fly 2. And let's have Bill read this first one from
because it's
Jerry Chandler,
your friend and mine, Jerry Chandler, who I really missed at Dragon Con this year.
Yeah, me too.
I'll bet.
I hope he and his family will be back next year. Jerry
he
Chandler
did a lot of volunteer work there, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's a mainstay there. Jerry Chandler says of The Fly 2, good enough to watch, had some interesting ideas. And then he has to add his 2 cents in that Howling 3 rocks.
Thank you. Yep.
Jerry, you go straight to hell for that.
Yeah. Totally insane Australian splatter comedy. Crystal should have stuck to her guns.
See, that's why I like Jerry. He knows what good movies are. I'm just saying, guys.
Are you kidding me?
No,
Jerry,
I like that. Yeah, he does.
Jerry Loch Ness Horror Chandler. Yeah.
Jerry, Loch Ness Horror.
All right.
Thanks, Jerry.
Good job.
So,
no, don't thank him for that.
Let's have Chad read where there's one from Chad White on The Fly 2.
Chad.
Chad White says, great show all. I remember watching this in the theater when I was young. Before theaters cost you an arm and a leg, pun intended. Okay. The elevator scene was my favorite part. I remember having a crush on Daphne Zuniga after Spaceballs. Eric Stoltz is always great. The antagonists definitely got their just desserts. It's one of those movies that almost lives up to the original. True.
Yeah, Chad.
Yeah, it was good. I love that Fly 2. It's a different, like I said in the podcast, it's different, but it's just as good to me. It was just it's its own movie. I agree.
Yeah.
And I wish this is terrible. I can't remember his last name, but Brian from New York, who's on Horror News Radio now, or on the theatrical reviews on Gruesome.
Mm-hmm.
He commented on Fly 2 and said this was the beginning of his crush on Daphne Zuniga or Zuniga. So apparently, yeah. All right, Crystal, Lone Wolf.
A little fun fact, especially if you're a fan of Friday the 13th. The actress who replaced Gina Davis is Saffron Henderson. She played the rocker chick who gets killed by Jason Voorhees in Jason Takes Manhattan. I had no idea about that. She's also had a good career as a voice actress for anime, including the famous Dragon Ball series. That's awesome. The Fly 2 was a pretty good sequel that was never going to surpass Cronenberg's remake, and that's okay. Solid actors with a really cool monster design, even though it didn't quite look like an insect. Eric Stoltz is just awesome in any movie he's in. True. Daphne Zuniga is cute and provides a good love interest for Brundle Jr. She's in another 80s horror movie called The Initiation. I haven't seen that, which is on Tubi, so I'll have to check that out. Now, if you'll excuse me, I got to go cuddle with my dog after talking about The Fly 2. Love y'all. Love you too. Tubi, The Initiation. I have not seen that. I have to write that down.
It does make you appreciate your dog.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
The Fly 2, yeah.
so sad.
Okay, back to Bill on Kevin Coleman on The Fly 2.
Kevin Coleman says, I love this one. Mick Garris is an awesome guy. The needle break always makes me cringe. Oh, I'm right there with you. Yes, I hate needles and breaking a needle. The dog is heartbreaking and makes me hate humans. Overall, still a great one. It does what it aims, and it does it well, in my opinion. Have any of you read The Fly Outbreak from IDW Comics? They are written as a sequel to this movie. They were fine, worth a read for fans of this property. I have not, but I'd be interested to see where they
I'll
are.
check that out too. Yeah.
I'm aware of it, but I've never read it.
When I was a kid, and my little brother, who was 5 years younger than me, so he was probably like 4 or something like that. We were at the doctor's office, and he was supposed to get a shot, and he was like totally freaking out. And so my mom had to be in there with him, and I was somehow or another, I ended up being in the room watching.
Oh, there's a mistake.
When the doctor stuck the hypo in, he jerked, and the needle came out of the hypo, and he's sitting there looking at that needle sticking out of his arm, screaming bloody murder.
That's what he gets for jerking.
Wow.
You shouldn't laugh, but I know I wasn't laughing at the time. I was just as horrified as he was.
Yeah.
I'm sure, but,
You
You only laugh because you know he's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And because it
All
wasn't
right.
you.
Yep.
So here's another one from Lone Wolf, this time about The Deadly Spawn, episode 213. Chad?
Lone Wolf says, imagine if the three-headed monster that fought Godzilla was legally blind with enough teeth to make Corbin Burnsen's character from The Dentist blush. And you pretty much get this fantastic creature. I had the same thought as Bill when he compared the ending to some cut footage from Little Shop of Horrors. My favorite scene is when the kid figures out the monster's weakness by making a sound, very much like Tremors. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This film, like The Evil Dead, is a prime example of skill and ingenuity overcoming a small budget. It certainly is. It certainly is.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed this movie as well as this episode. Love you folks as always. Love you too, Lone Wolf.
Love. Yeah, love.
Yeah,
See, that's so sweet. Love you. Thank
Love
you.
you back.
Love these guys. And Crystal, here's one from Evil Genius.
Evil.
Deadly Spawn.
Evil. Your dinner is in the oven. Okay, sorry. I saw this movie back in the day. I want to say it made it onto HBO or Skinamax. I'm kidding, Cinemax, because I know that I saw it years ago. You know, it's a good vintage 80s with all that grandfathered in knob and tube wiring in the basement.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, I don't know what that means. Yeah. Okay. I liked it. Good monster and a fun movie. I loved the posters in the kids' room. Totally. I want to go watch The Spider now with that poster being so prominently displayed. Though, what is it with the cryptid? Don't try it, Gary, at the end of the credits. I wonder. What?
I've always wondered about that myself. I have no idea. Nor
Don't
could I
try
find
it,
anything
Gary.
about it.
Ooh, that's interesting.
At the very end of
also,
the credits, yeah.
That's a weird one. Like, also, with people tossing out suggestions, how about The Ninth Configuration? It's a wild, messed up movie. Watched it the other day on Shudder. It has Joe Spinell, another film to watch to complete the Spinell over there. Wow, okay. And a bunch of other actors that you've seen somewhere. Okay, I've never seen that. The Ninth Configuration. Have y'all?
I've heard of it.
Yeah,
Well,
it is good.
another
It's
one.
interesting.
Okay.
I believe it's by directed by William Blatty, who wrote The Exorcist. If I'm
Yeah, I think you're
correctly.
right. I think you're
Right.
right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shudder.
So I'll take the last one because Chad White it's sort of like he's replying to himself. So I think last episode we read where he talks about the deadly spawn. I've seen this title several times over the years, and I've always skipped over it. Great review. I'm going to add it to my watch list. And then his addition is watched it. Great recommendation. Loved it. That poor kid is going to need a lot of therapy after that basement scene. Thanks again. So glad you went and watched it.
Yeah. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's one of the cool things. There's so much product out there. I mean, so many movies are released every week. You may not always, modern people may not get the chance to go back and look at some of the older ones. So, it's kind of cool to be, I don't want to be a gatekeeper, but, someone who we can throw out recommendations about some things you might have missed and give them a shot. So
that's why I love doing these podcasts because
of a gatekeeper.
Someday,
right.
Wait, Chad?
Huh?
Chad, you were saying something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You love doing the podcast, and I was like,
I love doing
You said I love doing this podcast because some days
I couldn't have said that.
That sounded like it.
No.
That's why I love doing these podcasts, because
I like doing these podcasts because we run across films that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And that's the fun of it for me, is to watch something that I would look at it and go, but you're sort of kind of forced to watch it for the show. And it's just an added bonus when you end up really liking what it was.
Yeah. Well,
you've introduced me to a lot, Chad. I think I'm like,
Chad White said that too. I mean, how many times have I scrolled past that title and thought, I should probably watch that. I've heard of that, but it's not, I don't know, something about the poster or something. I'm turning my nose up, and then we do it. And speaking of which, by the way, that's it for this episode. But every 2 weeks, we'll be focusing on a specific film released between 1980 and 1989. Next up, we tackle one chosen by Chad, which is
Cannibal Apocalypse.
Cannibal Apocalypse.
Also known as Cannibals in the Streets.
Yeah.
From 1980.
Yeah.
John
Saxon.
Yeah, John Saxon, and directed by Antonio Margheriti, which we did one of his films.
Antonio Margheriti.
Area. Yeah. We did The Long Hair of Death, starring Barbara Steele.
Yep. One of Quentin Tarantino's favorite directors. Margheriti's done some really cool stuff. Doesn't get the attention that a lot of the others do, but some good stuff.
I ordered the Blu-ray.
Of course you did. You didn't have to say anything.
Yeah.
It'd be if you want to shock us one day, tell us I didn't get the Blu-ray. They offered it, and I was like, I didn't get the
Blu-ray of Krull, although Crystal, it is available for like $7.
It is?
Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
at this point we're surprised when you don't get it.
Anyway. I don't get them if I know. I gotta really love the movie if they don't have extras on it. Sometimes I get them just to have extras because I like to learn about them.
Did you get God Monster of Indian Flats?
I did, but the DVD. And those extras are the most 2 hours, 2+ hours of extras that have nothing to do with that movie.
See how excited he gets?
Yeah, that's true.
They're terrible. Isn't that the one with the Yeti,
the Bigfoot, rapey Bigfoot, it's awful.
Rapey Bigfoot. It's just not cool. Anyway, all right. So there's plenty of ways to stay in touch.
Yes.
Please send feedback to feedback@gruesomemagazine.com or leave comments on the Gruesome Magazine YouTube channel, Gruesome Magazine's H&R and DOH podcast Facebook group, or at the website, gruesomemagazine.com.
Yep.
We love comments. We read most of them. I can't say we read all of them. Sometimes I lose them between. It's easiest for me to pull them off of YouTube, but I know a lot of people just listen to the podcast. So whatever is easiest for you, I'll try to find them. So anyway, like and subscribe, please. We're trying to build up our subscriber list. There's lots of content on the Gruesome Magazine YouTube page. If you haven't checked it out, Horror News Radio is back. So we have frequent short episodes of horror news of the time. So check those out. Streaming
fun.
and theatrical releases on Gruesome Magazine and Decades of Horror. Because we love them all.
Oh, yeah.
Catch
And
us
we know
again
you love
here.
the 80s best, don't you?
I
Don't
love
you?
the classic era best.
Don't
I'm
you?
sorry, but because I'm an old coot.
Yeah.
I love them all. I
And
do.
nobody
love 'em all.
disagreed with him on that.
Nobody. She turned around like, oh,
Here
there
it
he is,
is, Rob.
being Mr. Obvious again. All right. Catch us again here in 2 weeks for another great horror movie of the 1980s, as only Decades of Horror can do it. Thank you all, and say good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Gruesome Magazine.